Hello everybody, welcome to another installment in the Let's Build series Bounty Drag Racing Edition. Today I have something I think you may enjoy. If you've played or been online in the Bounty Drag Racing community recently, you're probably very aware of the upcoming $1,000 to win Outlaw Pro Mod Clash coming up in just a couple weeks. If you were not aware, you are now. If you've yet to pick up Bounty Drag Racing, this is a great excuse to give it a try. Go ahead and grab it off of Steam if this is your kind of thing, and head over to the Bounty Drag Racing Discord channel to follow along and join in on the action. Entry is free to everyone. Qualifying takes place August 7th and 8th. Eliminations go down August 9th with the quickest 32 racers battling it out for the money on the new look South Beach Motorsports Park. To help all of you get up to speed, in today's Let's Build, we're going to fix our slightly broken legal twin turbo Pro Mod GTO from the last installment of this series, and then we're going to convert it to Outlaw Pro Mod trim. We'll start exactly where we left off in the last episode, make a few passes, analyze the data on each, make the changes to go quicker, and in a half dozen runs or so, we're going to have a twin turbo Pro Mod combination that's competitive in both regular and Outlaw trim. If you enjoy this or find it helpful, hit that thumbs up to remind YouTube that this is some pretty good stuff. If you're into this sort of thing, subscribe to the channel for more, hit that bell and all the other stuff. It does help the channel and I appreciate it. Now, before we get into this, Bounty Drag Racing is an ever-evolving game. The physics have gone through more changes than any of us can recall. By the time you're watching this, there is a chance something has changed once again, and the setup in this video may or may not work anymore as it does here today. The setups themselves are not the point of these videos at all. The intention is to give you a base to start with and the understanding of what to do with it after. Okay, the first order of business here today is fixing our car from the last episode. Since that video was made, some physics and performance adjustments have resulted in pro mods that tend to pull the front wheels off the ground easier than before, and some aerodynamic tweaks have aided in the cars being a good bit faster on the top end and quicker overall. That brings us to our first pass of the day. Since we already had a car capable of respectable performances for the game build it was built on, we're going to start with that and run it on the same track in the same conditions where we left off. That means we're back at Straight Line Media Raceway. The track meter is at 76% and the density altitude is 515 feet. For a detailed explanation about why each setting is as it is here to begin with, you can go back to the first video in the series where I cover everything in detail. To save some time here today, I'll be focusing only on the things we change along the way. For now, that's nothing. I'm just going to send it exactly as it was at the end of the last video and we'll see what happens. If you're one of those that grabbed this setup from that video, you know what's coming. For those that didn't, here's a good example of how a new game build can affect a perfectly decent working race car. Well, that was a ride, a 570 at 256 miles per hour. If you're someone new to the game, and this was the first setup you grabbed, I can see how you might be a little bit discouraged. Now I'm going to show you why you shouldn't be, and why simply knowing what does what and why is everything. And I don't even need to see the data log on that to diagnose the problem. It wheelied a lot, and I knew it would. I just needed to get an idea of how much, and that should be an easy fix. As I said in the first part of the series, the higher a car's ride height, the higher the center of gravity, the easier and quicker it transfers weight. Lowering that is one of the more effective ways of dealing with a car that wants to launch itself into low Earth orbit the moment you release the trans brake. So that's what we're doing here, on all four corners. Another way to keep the nose down is to simply put more weight on it, which we'll do here as well. And that's it. If you're using any other car than the Pro Mod GTO, the ideal weight locations and ride heights do vary, so be aware of that. The rest of this setup should work as it does here. Let's see what happens. Some might see as tune-up braking changes to the game can often be overcome with a little experience, and in this case a lower ride height and a small weight adjustment. A 5.511 257 mile per hour pass is a very competitive run in regular Pro Mod trim. And I shit you not, it really is that simple if you understand how it all works. That really only did take a single pass to diagnose and fix, and the result was a second pass that would have qualified number 3 at the most recent quarter-mile Pro Mod event, just 0.003 of a second short of matching the guy that qualified number 1. Now that we got that fixed, it's time to go Outlaw. Continuing on with the same build, we'll choose the Outlaw Pro Mod Twin Turbo option. With the same setup and an extra 277 horsepower for Shifts and Giggles, let's just send it as it is and see how it goes. Yeehaw! She got on the bars and stayed there a long time, a 541 riding the rev limiter to a tick under 268 miles per hour. On the plus side, it went straight, and that's always a good place to start. Now, let's go have a look at the data logger, and I'll point out the obvious problems with that pass. The orange line here is the rear wheel speed. These big bumps indicate where the rear tires were breaking loose. The reason for that is clearest in the light blue and green lines here that indicate rear wheel suspension travel. While this looks like a sketch of a kick-ass roller coaster, these big dips are from the weight being unloaded off the rear tires, which results in them spinning. The ass end on this thing was bouncing up and down for at least a few hundred feet on that pass. The white line here is the front wheel speed, and the obvious cause of it all. A flat line or dips here indicate when the front tires are not on the ground. In this case, they don't touch down for nearly 3.5 seconds, which would make it right around the 8th mile mark. I bet there would be smoke. Anyway, that's not good. Much like I did with the regular Pro Mod to adjust for the different game build, here we're going to start by lowering the ride heights by the same amount we did then, one big click, and send it. I should probably put some weight on the nose as well, but here's a chance to see what difference 0.025 makes in ride height. Well, I know it came down before the 8th mile that time because I ran over the timing blocks. An aborted 6.25 at 141 miles per hour for our efforts. Again, while things may seem to be going the wrong direction, it's not that bad. If you're trying this setup in any other chassis than this, these are likely the same steps you'll need to make to get your car to work. Looking at the data here, this thing is still lifting the front wheels too hard for too long, and our rear wheel travel lines still resemble a roller coaster, albeit a tiny bit less kick-ass than before. For the next pass, we'll start by lowering the wheelie bars. This should reduce how high the front comes off the ground, and hopefully eliminate some of the rear end bouncing. And I'm going to put a tiny bit more weight to the front as well to slow that whole process. Again, trying to get the power to the ground just a little less violently. Finally, the car turning right going down track was a pretty good indication that the car is a little bit overpowered early and spinning the tires more than we want. Some of that may be due to the rear end bouncing, but not all of it. Remember, we've done nothing to reduce power levels converting over from regular Pro Mod turn to Outlaw, and this engine is making an additional 277 horsepower. I think taking some boost out of it in first and second gears should help bring the wheel speed under control. You do want some wheel spin or you risk dead hooking and bogging off the line, but when it's at the point of trying to turn the car, it's too much. Not perfect, but not bad. How about a 5.250 at 268 miles per hour? Looking at the data, the orange rear wheel speed line is looking much better than the anthill shapes we had previously, with the biggest of the humps coinciding with the unloading of the rear suspension. The fronts still don't touch down until the end of third gear, so we have a little more work to do there, but I think we're very close to finding the right chassis balance here for this setup. To address that, we'll keep doing what we've been doing so far and move yet more weight forward. Our tiny steps have only resulted in marginal gains so far, so this time we'll take a bigger one and see what happens. The other issue holding us back here is the gearing. Well, the RPMs are pretty much where we want them through each gear. This gap between first and second is a little big, and it was on the rev limiter from about 1,000 feet to the finish line in fifth. The fix for this is pretty simple. A lower final drive should get us across the finish line before we get on the rev limiter, and a lower first gear should close the gap some between first and second gears, while also calming the wheel speed a little more off the line. Well, there's an example of going a little bit too far on something. The gearing felt much better, but the car is no longer pulling the front wheels enough to be effective at transferring weight and planting the rear tires to the track. No data log required for these changes. I'll simply start moving some weight back and make an educated guess as to how much. Anything more than this last pass and less than the pass before should be an improvement. Well, I would call that a success, a 5.195 and a tick under 275 miles an hour. That's actually my personal best in this class with a twin turbo combination so far. So we'll have one more look at the data logger here so we can see what it looks like when things go more or less as they should. The gap between first and second gears is now closer to where we'd like to see it, and the rear wheel speed line has gotten a lot smoother, but just a hint of tire spin at the 1-2 shift. Much of that is due to this. We got the chassis balanced nicely for these conditions, and the wheelies are now less violent and actually effective rather than disruptive, as we can see by the rear wheel travel lines. Once the suspension is loaded, the rear stayed more or less planted for the entire pass instead of bouncing up and down like we had before. There are always improvements to be found, but I'm going to leave that up to you now. I've given you all a good base to start with, and I've done my best to show you what to do with it. For now, it's up to you. See you at the track. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, keep it in your own damn lane.